New York State just banned broker fees. Who will this affect? Should tenants just celebrate and rejoice right now? How will this impact the market? That's exactly what I'm going to talk about in this video. So let's start off by answering the question, what is a broker fee? A broker is basically the person that's in between the landlord and the tenant. They help the landlords find a new tenant and they help the tenant find a new apartment. So the broker's fee is the commission that the broker makes for putting this deal together. New York City is unique in the sense that the broker's fee was traditionally paid by the tenants. The broker's fee can be anywhere between half a month's rent all the way up to 15% of the yearly rent. This can be a substantial amount considering how expensive apartments are in New York City. Let's say for an example, you're renting a $3,000 apartment. That would mean that the fee can be anywhere between $1,500 all the way up to $5,400. If you add in the fact that most landlords will ask for the first month's rent as well as 1 month's security deposit, this can cost somebody close to $10,000 just to move. Now hopefully you get your deposit back from your previous apartment, but still it's a substantial amount. Last year in 2019, New York State passed the Housing Stability and Rental Protection Act. The majority of the act set rules for rent-controlled or rent-stabilized units. There weren't many new rules for the non-stabilized or free market apartments. The new rule that we're going to talk about today was the rule that says landlords can only charge tenants the first month's rent and 1 month's deposit when they sign the lease. This rule was a little bit ambiguous because it didn't mention anything about the broker's fee. So technically, the broker's fee isn't charged by the landlord. The broker's fee is charged by the broker. So everyone interpreted this rule as nothing changed with the commission structure. The brokers are still allowed to charge their broker's fee. But earlier this week, the Department of State issued a guidance stating that if a broker is representing the landlord, they can no longer charge the tenants the broker's fee. Now, if the broker is representing the tenants, they can still collect their fee. So who wins and who loses in this scenario? Is this better for the tenants or is this better for the landlords? How will this affect the market overall? Let me start by saying who this won't hurt. This won't hurt the multi-million-dollar investor who owns large apartment complexes. The landlords that own a lot of property or own apartment complexes, they usually already have someone doing the leasing for them. They usually have a leasing office. So this wouldn't change a thing for them because they never charged a broker's fee to begin with. I see this playing out in 3 different ways. The first scenario is everyone's gonna smash the like button. The first way is the landlords are now just going to start renting their own apartments instead of hiring a broker. Now the problem with this is there's a lot of rules and regulations that the landlords need to follow that they may not know about. And they can get in a lot of trouble if they don't do this properly. The brokers are supposed to be experts in this field. So let's go over what a broker does. The first thing that a broker needs to do is do the market analysis. They need to figure out how much this apartment can rent for. Then they need to take pictures and advertise this apartment. Now all of this takes time and money because when you advertise, you need to pay an advertising fee. For instance, if you post on StreetEasy's, Trulia, Zillow, all of those sites, you have to pay $6 a day to keep the listing online. If you're putting out Facebook or Google ads, you need to pay for that. The next thing a broker needs to do is actually show the apartment. Sometimes you might show the apartment to like 30 people and still not get it rented out. So you have to put a lot of time into it. After finding an interested tenant, the broker needs to go through the screening process and actually make sure the tenant is actually who they are and if they're able to pay the rents. I actually made a video just about screening tenants. If you're interested in that, it's going to be linked above. Now, I self-manage my own properties, so this wouldn't really affect me too much, but you can't imagine how much crazy stuff I've seen. People faking their jobs, people faking their incomes, people faking where they live. People come up with like whole different identities. On my application, I always ask tenants where they live, where they used to live, and the contact information of their previous landlords so I can reach out to them and see if they've been a good tenant. A lot of times I would get fake numbers or I would get numbers for one of their friends or something pretending to be their landlord. People try all sorts of stuff, and if you're not an experienced landlord, you can get really screwed. Oh, I forgot to mention, the new act also has a new rule where it can take up to 1 whole year to evict somebody. Can you imagine that? Imagine the rent is $3,000. 1 whole year is $36,000. $36,000 that the potential landlord can lose, plus legal fees. There are also a ton of rules on what you need to include with your lease. For example, there's a new rule where you have to give a sprinkler disclosure. You need to specify if your house or building has a sprinkler. You need to give out a lead paint disclosure to tell your tenant if you know of any lead paint in the house. You need to give out a child's guard disclosure, stating that if they have young children, you need to come and install window guards. If you forget to give out one of these disclosures, a tenant can use that against you to break their lease. Or worse, they might sue you if something happened. So if the first scenario plays out, a lot of landlords will get hurt. The second way I see this playing out is landlords are going to continue using a broker, but they're going to raise the rents to cover the broker's fee. Let me just give you an easy number as an example. Let's say, for example, the commission was $2,400. So the landlord is going to pay the $2,400 up front and then just increase their rent by $200 and have the tenants reimburse the landlord for it. The problem is the rent's not gonna go down after the first year. You're gonna be paying that extra $200 every single month, even if you stay longer than 1 year. This would definitely hurt the renters. Personally, I think this is probably what's gonna happen. The third scenario is the landlords just eat that cost. I think this scenario is the least likely scenario because it already costs a ton of money to own property here. If you've owned your property for a long time, a couple $1,000s every 2 or 3 years isn't gonna hurt you that much. But if you're a new owner, this is gonna be huge. One of my neighbors is actually renovating a 3-family house and he's getting ready to put it on the market. Now if he has to pay this broker's fee, he's gonna have to pay like $10,000 just to lease out his house. But at the end of the day, I think the Department of State actually achieved what they wanted. Because the act was mostly geared towards rent-stabilized and rent-controlled units. So rent-stabilized and rent-controlled units can't just raise the rent, so the landlords will have to eat the cost. But doing so, they're going to indirectly hurt all the other renters. The renters who don't qualify for the rent-controlled or rent-stabilized apartments. Landlords of rent-controlled buildings are already hurting from the rules set in last year's act. Property values for rent-controlled buildings have been steadily declining. They're already limited to how much money they can recoup for renovations and repairs. If they spend too much money renovating or making improvements in their properties, they can't get that money back from the rent. So if rents for free market apartments go up, there'll be even less interest in rent-controlled buildings. This will cause them to go even further into disrepair. Also, what's gonna happen to the thousands of apartments that are listed right now? The brokers already have contracts signed stating that they're gonna collect this commission from the tenants. What's gonna happen to them? The guidance didn't really specify. Anyway, only time will tell what's really gonna happen. So I'm just gonna sit back and observe and then adjust my strategy accordingly. If you've liked this video, please hit the thumbs up. If you want to see more videos about real estate and investing, please hit the subscribe button. And if you have any questions or you just want to leave me a message, please leave it in the comment section below. That's it from me. Thanks for watching.